shortly, 2-3 minutes, I'm coming to my conclusion, that, taking clue from Dr. Ambedkar's, emphasis on not calling Hinduism a Hindu civilization. What Ambedkar says? Ambedkar says that this Hinduism, or better word to use to that is infamy, he says. The better word to use is infamy, not civilization. But you have Professor Kanche Shepherd coming up, with the entire emphasis, endorsement on the Harappa civilization, and saying that this Harappa civilization symbolizes the spade, whereas you have the counter-revolution coming from the, the Brahminic scriptures, who has used the book to completely, demolish the spade. So there is a wonderful chapter in this book, the spade versus book. Now, why this civilization matter is very important? Because again, you are having one controversy that do not call Harappa civilization as Harappa civilization, you call it as a Vedic Saraswati civilization from last 1 year. In fact, if I'm not wrong, that is also a school textbook, new insert, new addition that, this, I forgot his name, Daunton or, some scholar, he had put in the NCERT class 6 textbook. Now, in this, entire, the regime of untruth, or what they call it as, in this entire, aura of regime of truth, how should we deal with this project of destabilizing the Hindutva? Because the intellectual, moral, social reformation doesn't come only through writings, but it only enlarges or expands when you act on it. That is what even Mahatma Phule had was doing it. Now this brings to me the major important point of the usage of the categories in the current 21st century, or whatever period that you are calling it. Probably, Dr. Ravikant Kisana might disagree with both of us, both Professor Kanche and myself. But, as I said, the pure Brahmin Iyengar categories are not going there. Categories are, in fact, they are taking pride in, sort of using it, assertion. Categories are asserted now. Categories are stabilized now, and categories are normalized now in the so-called urban, Indian landscape. Now, can we understand this category sociologically and anthropologically is something even I also feel. But when institutions are not, or let's say, let me put it, in a very different framework, or when institutions are having itself a dominant narrative, how can we, especially again, the marginalized communities, how do we study ethnography, or how do we study sociology or anthropology? Now the Brahmins might do an ethnographic study on the Dalit kitchens. Now can the Dalit and the Shudra do an ethnographic study on the Brahmin kitchen? Show me one book. Show me one book where an ethnographic study is done on the Brahmin, Vaisya and the Kshatriya kitchen. Now this question I might ask to the so-called mainstream academia. If this question is not asked, for me the dominant narratives, the mainstream narratives of the so-called anthropology, the little tradition, great tradition, that does not work. I think this is something, this Buffalo intellectual can offer us. His writings probably is, it might look as very strange, but they are very, essential. Yes, critique should be there. Obviously, without critique, again, the intellectual churning that does not take place. Even I have, my own issues with Professor Kanche's writings, but still, one cannot completely disregard the scholarship that, Professor Kanche had brought. Now, lastly, this books mostly brings in, I'm happy, literally I'm happy that, Geeta ma'am had, taken this, work. Because who would talk on Shudra historiography in this time? Or who would, it's not, yes, when a book comes, it is not that the publication always endorses the book, the narratives, but still, the question remains, right? What if, this book were coming from Oxford, or to put it in another way, why this book is not coming from Oxford, Cambridge, or Harvard? why the alternative publication houses are publishing, because the politics of publishing also we have seen, right? As many of you are aware of the hatred in the belly, Roundtable India's entire issue, right? So this historiography, what Professor Kanche talks about, an alternative Shudra historiography. Now, when I was thinking of how to take forward this Shudra historiography, I can see I can see many young scholars, students, some of our own students from Pakpet who are here, and across, like from IFLU and TIS Hyderabad students are here. There is a structure of this so-called post-colonial Brahminical state that is there in front of us. Now, this Shudra historiography can offer some insights in studying the structure of this post-colonial Brahminical state. That is number one, submission. Very implicitly, this book or Professor Kanche's writings would offer. Number one. Number two, how are its various organs are operating in itself. Let's say how police, the entire criminal justice system is operating. Because again, the agenda of religion or agenda of culture, it cannot go separately from the economy. So you have, Dr. Ambedkar making a very brilliant point in his Mukti Kon Paate, What Path to Salvation essay, that conversion is not only a cultural agenda, it is also a, material emancipatory agenda, right? So we need to understand these various organs, how its operation. Number three, the nature of the alignment of the classes, different groups. And number four, the ideology of the elite itself. And now this elite, it's not again a homogeneous category, like how the Sudras or OBC is not a homogeneous category, right? And Kanche is aware of that. Professor Kanche is aware that the category of OBC or Sudra is not an entire single entity. That is the reason the post-Hindu India work or turning the pot, tilling the land, dignity of labor work has come, which many of the scholars don't, agree with. But if he were, putting the entire things under one carpet of the Shudra or OBCs, that work of the different productive castes would not have come. So as a students of sociology and, social sciences, I think, we need to pay a very serious attention when we are reading, this. And number four, the contradictions and coalitions. Number five, the role of the personalities. Number six, the ideological character of the historiography itself. And I have largely benefited from Professor Kanche's scholarship. That is the reason I am probably, able to make some sense in understanding the ideology of the mainstream historiography. Now, you might say that, Professor Kanche's writings are expired. You might even argue that Professor Kanche's writing does not hold much significance to the, because, liberal arts is coming. The entire interdisciplinary, subject, the nature of the discipline itself is changing, right? Then how can, his writings, which does not have any references, which does not have any footnotes, which does not have proper sociological validity, how his writings would help? No, then I think you are at a mistake, right? His writings, obviously, it requires a larger postmortem, but it also requires a larger celebration like this. Right? And, lastly, to quote one thing, that the categories are important, as what, Professor Kanche says, is that for liberation, you need identity. For liberation, you need identity. And having this, the notions of identity and liberation are two different things. I'm quoting from, 3 lines from the book. To move towards liberation, the construction of an identity is inevitable. But the construction of identity itself does not mean that the goal of liberation is reached. I think this resolves, the dilemma of using the word Shudra, where even Mahatma Phule has used unapologetically, saying that there should be a dichotomous social structure, Sudra Ati Sudra versus Sethji Bhatji. He was unapologetical about it, and the Satyasodak Samaj went ahead. And you are reading Mahatma Phule now, and we are, still celebrating the, legacy of Mahatma Phule's writing. And in the similar way, we would also take forward, or we will also celebrate, we will also critique the writings of Professor Kanche illaih shepherd. Thanks for giving me opportunity. Thank you one and all.